Okay, so here's the quick 60-second summary on my experience with the bike so far. On the shakedown rides, I discovered the levers were rattling like mad. Easy fix, sorted now. The brake caliper, front brake caliper was rubbing. Relatively easy fix, sorted now. The cover on the down tube for the storage box was rattling. Easy fix, sorted now. Gear indexing was a bit of a problem, but that was down to inexperience on my part more than anything else. Sorted and now shifting, beautiful. I really can't complain. Chain slap when I stop pedaling in the lower two cogs, nothing I can really do about that. I think that's just a downside or a flaw of the cheap derailleur. So that's something that I'd have to live with. Not really a massive issue, but annoying nonetheless. Couple of punctures, totally my fault. Sorted, won't happen again. Handlebar, probably too narrow for my liking. Again, relatively easily sorted, if not going to cost a few quid. But I had to try something different to what I already had on my other bike, so I don't regret it. And what else? Okay, so let's talk about the bike. How have I been getting on? Well, at the end of today, I'll have, I'd say, at least 250 kilometers put up on it. Now, a lot of those were sort of 15, 20k shakedown rides, and the last few rides have been more in the vicinity of 40k-ish, so a little bit longer, as I've been working out the kinks. How you doing? So what kind of problems did I come across on the first few rides that needed resolving? Well, the first few issues were noise issues, just a lot of rattling from the road noise. So the first thing was the levers. That was relatively easily resolved. Turned out there's just a couple of little grub screws, well, one grub screw on each lever. You just pull back the rubber hood on the top a little bit. Little grub screw there. I think that adjusts the reach for the brake levers, and that just seemed to tighten everything up. And that was a simple fix, no more rattle. Job done. Move on to the next thing that was bothering me, which was a bit of rattle coming from the cover on the down tube for the storage compartment. Now, the storage compartment obviously has two bolts on it for mounting a bottle cage. When I was out on the shakedown rides, I didn't have bottles with me, and everything seemed okay. But as soon as I went on a longer ride and I put a bottle on, I was then hearing rattling. Now that's been a relatively easy fix. All I did there was put some blue tack on either side of the cover, and then when I click it into place, just those little bits of blue tack on each side have stopped it from rattling. So I'm sure I could come up with a more permanent fix, but at least I know that it's a relatively small issue that can be resolved relatively easy. So that was that noise eliminated. The next noise was brake rub, disc brake rub, particularly from the front. Tried a lot of different things to resolve that, and in the end I just had to give in, and I had to face the brake mount points on the frame itself. So basically, when they spray the bike, there's a bit of paint overspray that goes onto the mounts, and yeah, if it's not flush when you tighten up the brake caliper, it's going to cause the brake caliper to slightly slide and misalign. That's the simplest, easiest way I can explain it. So the only way around it is you just have to get that paint off. So a little bit of a foil, and it was only one of the holes actually that had a bit of paint overspray. I just foiled it down for 30 seconds. Then I remounted, recentered, and it's nearly 100% now, not really a problem. So yeah, that was another relatively easy issue to fix. The next problem after that was, I would say, the gears, getting them indexed properly. And then I kind of figured something out myself, but then I saw a video a little later on, like just this week, I think it was the Oz Cyclist. I was looking up a video on the wheel top electronic group set that they have. More on that later. That might be coming. And basically while he was installing that, he was mentioning, which the conclusion I came to, that actually indexing the bike when it's up on a stand can sometimes be a bit difficult because you don't have any real load going through the chain. So sometimes you get a bit of noise, or it doesn't sound like it's shifting correctly or that it's lined up correctly. But once you get on the road and you're actually putting a bit of power through the chain, it's actually way smoother than it is in the stand. So actually, that slowed down the indexing process. Because I was trying to get it to sound as smooth as anything in the stand, when really that might be difficult. So yeah, once I had the high limit screw set, the low limit screw set, at least then the chain wasn't going to go off the top or off the bottom. Then you just index a couple of the gears, micro adjust it halfway up the cassette, and then go out and take it for a test ride and see how it's performing. And I did have a problem with the B limiter screw, so I was setting that in the highest gear, so the easiest gear, the largest cog. I was trying to get the upper jockey wheel to the recommended distance, but what was happening was, which took me a while to figure out, as I dropped down into the smallest cog, the derailleur was actually hitting off the frame of the bike. So what I had to do was adjust that B screw in the smallest cog so that it was just missing the frame. And then I had to accept that that's as close as I could get that upper guide jockey wheel to the cassette. That's literally the physical limitation of this setup. Now in saying that, it's shifting now perfectly fine. The only slight issue, two issues I have. When you do want to get up into that granny gear, up into that, is it 44 tooth I think is on this cassette? 42, 44? I can't remember, but anyway, it's fairly big. When I want to get up into that cog, I have to hold the shifter all the way across. So if I want to change gear at the moment, I just click once and then I can release and it'll shift up. If I want to get up into that last cog, I kind of have to hold it over and do almost one full rotation until the chain is fully wrapped around the cassette, and then I can release it and everything is fine. Now it is an extreme chain line when I look down, but that's nothing to do with the bike or the setup. That's just a one-by system. You're going to get that. So that's one little quirky thing. Once you're aware of it, it's not a big issue. Just hold it all the way across until the chain is fully on. Then you can release, and I'm not having any issues. Then I can pedal away. And then the next issue I'm having is in the lowest cog, or the lowest two cogs, so your smallest cogs. When I stop pedaling, the chain kind of slaps down on the chainstay. So it's almost as if the rear cassette continues turning and pushes the chain forward, but that's not what's happening because, well, everything is brand new, so it's not as if it's wear and tear or anything like that. The cassette is turning freely, and anyway, I think I figured that out, but there's nothing I can do about it. And basically I think that's to do with the clutch on the derailleur, that it's just not strong enough. Because if I give the clutch a little bit of support, a little bit of help, and then I stop pedaling, like when I have the bike in the frame, obviously is what I'm talking about. If I hold that derailleur back a little bit, like to create a bit of extra tension or extra spring in it, when I stop pedaling, it doesn't happen. So I think that's just part and parcel of this system, of this derailleur and these levers. I mean, at the end of the day, there were 90 euros for two levers and a derailleur. So you kind of do get what you pay for as well. But it changes so smooth, it runs silently. I'm really not having any issues or problems. Now granted, only about 250k, but yeah, really nice. Really happy with it so far. Okay, what else? Well, I must say, everything else has been pretty good, apart from some errors on my side. For example, I don't do tubeless, I put tubes in. I'm not even going to go into all the reasons why, but I'm just happy to have tubes. But I foolishly didn't put rim tape on before I put the tubes in. And yeah, so you'll get so far, but then eventually, basically the holes that are in the rim are going to puncture the tubes with the pressure that they're under. So yeah, I just had to, so I got 2 punctures, front and back, both tubes. It was a stupid mistake. One you'll only make once, so don't do that. So yeah, make sure you get rim tape and cover up those holes even if you're not going tubeless. So that might seem obvious to everyone, but hey, that's why this whole series is about me being a novice and not knowing what might seem obvious. And those are the kind of silly mistakes you make. So yeah, won't make that again. So that was another little teething problem, error, that was easy enough to resolve and fully my fault. What else? Okay, so my Tyre Choice, the reason for building this bike was to try and get something different to what I already had. But the reality is, it looks like I'm a 40mm man all day long. So I put 32s on this. I just found the ride a little too harsh for my liking, for the style of riding that I'm doing. I'm not racing anyone, I'm not chasing speed, I'm really after comfort. So I've got a set of 40s, that's what I'm riding on today for the first time on this bike. And yeah, massive difference. I mean, really nice. So yeah, 40s, another little, I won't say a lesson learned. You don't know unless you try. So now I've tried, and they will have their place. I have a couple of ideas where I can make use of them. Probably a future video. But I tried, didn't really work out this time around for the kind of riding I do. And now I'm back on 40s. Yeah, the other issue, not issue, just something I tried different was the handlebars. So on my Canyon Grail I have, I think it's 440s, and I decided on this one to go with 400, which is kind of, if you go by your shoulder width, is the recommendation, I guess, for me. And there's nothing wrong with them, but I just find it a bit too twitchy for my liking. Like, it definitely affects the steering. Now some people would say it makes the steering more responsive. I would call it twitchy. So I guess it just depends what you want out of a bike and what kind of riding you're doing as regards what's going to suit you. But I even find when I try and sit up in the saddle to kind of do a little hands-free with the deep dish on the front wheel with a bit of wind. Usually on the Canyon I don't have too many problems whatsoever. But on this, whether it's to do with the internal cable routing as well, I don't know. But it definitely feels a little more twitchy, a little less stable. That's the only way I can describe it. Whether that's the geometry of the frame, whether it's the deep dish on this wheel is the same depth as on my Canyon, so that shouldn't come into it, but it's a different wheel, DT Swiss versus what's obviously a cheaper wheel. So maybe it doesn't handle the crosswinds as well. You can see there, it's just a bit twitchy. Now again, my bike handling skills wouldn't be the greatest, but I usually don't have a problem on my Canyon. But yeah, I do find this setup here a little more twitchy. Now that won't be down to the width of the handlebars, at least I don't think so. But when I'm on the handlebars and, you know, every little piece of input really does have a big difference. So as I say, some people would call that more responsive, and it might be something they're after. To me, it just feels more twitchy and not particularly to my liking for my riding style. But I'm glad I tried it, because now I know. And the plan is to probably upgrade a lot of components on this bike to the redshift system. But the redshift is expensive, and I basically didn't want to go spending money on parts that were going to be the wrong size. So I took this as an opportunity to see what I liked and compare. And yeah, I think I've pretty much decided that the 440 width is probably for me. So that's good. to have that kind of confidence when I'm ordering, that I'm not missing out, that, you know, won't have in the back of my mind, oh, should I have gone narrower? Now I know. So nothing wrong with the handlebars, nothing, again, this is all just individual taste. So that's just another little observation for me and for my style of riding. Anything else? For me personally, the rear hub is too noisy. Yeah, makes a lot of noise when you're freewheeling. So I can probably take that out, pull out, or put extra grease in. I think that would quieten it down. But look, that's just a personal choice thing. It's got nothing to do again with the quality of anything or how well it worked or didn't work. Just a personal choice. So yeah, they do give off quite a buzz. So if you like that, these are probably the wheels for you. The rear hub might be noisy, but what it's great for is when you're approaching people on the greenway. It's almost like a bell. Yeah, it definitely lets people know you're coming. So, all in all, extremely happy with the way this project has turned out. I'm riding along here now on a bike that I built myself from the frame up, with all, you know, relatively cheap and available components, and with a little bit of tinkering and patience and no small help from YouTube. Yeah, I'm having a very enjoyable, comfortable ride in the sun today, and it's really putting a smile on my face. So overall, I'm extremely happy with this project, how it's gone, the final product, and on a day like today, on a road like this, it is mint. Absolutely loving it. But this bike does have one rather large problem. And that big problem is that I already own this. Nice bike. Thanks. Oh yeah, nice bike. Thanks. And that is a problem for me, because the type of riding that I do, I like to do these sportives. So it's 100+ kilometers on Irish roads. There's a lot of climbing very often. And even the kickers, you can be getting 20% kickers or certainly 15% plus. And so that makes it very difficult for me to reach for this bike when the Canyon Grail is available. It has a wider gear ratio. It's more comfortable on those long rides because it's eliminating more road noise due to the construction of it, the saddle, the double-decker handlebars. The electronic shifting makes a difference. So it would make it very difficult for me to reach for this bike and take it on one of those long sportives, which is really what I want to do when I have the Canyon Grail sitting there looking at me. And that is a problem for this bike. But it's a problem I think I can fix. There are some upgrades I can make to this bike. Not cheap upgrades, but still way cheaper than buying another Canyon Grail. But would make it a very viable option for those longer rides. And that is to upgrade to a redshift system. Redshift suspension, seat post, saddle. Redshift stem with the suspension built in, and a redshift handlebar. That would massively transform the comfort of this bike and make it a viable option for those longer rides, eliminating that road noise. And then to overcome the range of gear issue that I might have, and the electronic, upgrading to electronic, I might well go with a wheel top 2x system electronic group set. And if both of those upgrades went well, it would still probably be half the price of what I paid for that Canyon Grail, but now be a viable option for a bike that I could take on those longer spins. And that's what I might do. So I wonder, if I upgrade to wheel top and upgrade to Redshift, does this then genuinely become a choice that I would make over my Canyon Grail on a long spin? I think it might. I think it might. Because this is really nice today.